welcome students. Welcome back to all of you. This is week 5 and day 2 of our history lecture, and the lesson ongoing is the Umayyad dynasty, lesson number 3. Dear students, yesterday I have given a brief description of Umayyad dynasty. Today I have a informative documentary that will having all the information about Umayyad dynasty, and there is a lot of information input on the video and the documentary. So listen and watch the video carefully and try to note all the important points which you will get in the during the video. So here is your video.
To note because the Abbasids overthrew the Umayyads, and the historians of the time period would have seen it fit, either for their own political biases or those of their patrons, to portray the Abbasids as righteous and just, and the Umayyads as deserving their inglorious fate. And this interpretation of the Umayyads is seen in both Sunni and Shia sources. Despite that, however, the Umayyads were very important in the development of Islamic politics. Muhammad died in 632 and a quick succession crisis occurred, in which his father-in-law, Abu Bakr, would become the successor to the Prophet, called a caliph. He would then be succeeded first by Omar and then by Uthman, a member of the Umayyad clan. During his time as caliph, he appointed a sizable number of Umayyads in positions of power around the caliphate. Some of these appointees in Egypt were corrupt, which resulted in a group of Egyptian Muslims coming to the capital in Medina and killing Uthman. In the chaos of this assassination, the Prophet's cousin and son-in-law, Ali, was made caliph. This was controversial because the people who had made him caliph were the ones that killed Uthman, and Ali refused to punish them for it. In response, the Umayyad governor of Syria, Muawiyah, took up the task of achieving justice for his fallen clan member. This conflict between Ali and Muawiyah was eventually settled by arbitration, in which the caliphate was split between them. This arbitration upset a portion of Ali's supporters, who ended up rejecting the claim of Ali, or anyone else claiming to rule based on the right of their familial ties to Muhammad or the Quraysh, after which becoming the Kharijites. In 661, one of these Kharijites would assassinate Ali in his capital in Kufa, putting an end to the Rashidun Caliphate. When news of Ali's death reached Muawiyah in Damascus, he called up his army and marched down to Kufa, where he gained the support of most of Ali's followers through a combination of bribery and violent ultimatums. The most diehard of Ali's supporters wanted his eldest son, Hassan, to take up the mantle of caliph and challenge Muawiyah. However, Hassan and Muawiyah came to some sort of agreement, in which Hassan promised to not challenge Muawiyah for control of the caliphate in exchange for being left alone. There may have been other stipulations in their agreement, but the sources disagree on what those may have been. Regardless of the exact details, Hassan retired from public life and settled in Medina, where he died in 670, 10 years before Muawiyah. Most historians suspect foul play in the death of Hassan because Muawiyah was 20 years older than him, and yet Hassan died 10 years earlier. And it's suspected that Muawiyah had him killed, probably by poison, because he wanted his son Yazid to succeed him as caliph. However, the exact means by which he would have had him poisoned is uncertain. Under his rule, the caliphate relocated its capital from Kufa to Damascus, where his base of power was strongest. It was also closer to the frontier with the Byzantines, so he could continue to lead territorial expansion. He made one major attempt at taking Constantinople in the 670s, when he had the first Islamic navy constructed. He might have succeeded in taking the city were it not for the Byzantine strategic use of Greek fire, which set the navy ablaze. Despite this failure to conquer Constantinople, Muawiyah was still able to gain control of the islands of Rhodes and Crete for a time. The longest-lasting contributions of Muawiyah to the caliphate were administrative reforms. He continued Uthman's policies of bureaucratizing the caliphate, which he divided into 4 major administrative divisions: Egypt and North Africa, Iraq and Persia, Arabia, and Syria, which would be governed by the caliph directly. In order to avoid challenges from his own governors, he did not allow any of them to have their own standing armies. If they needed troops to engage in wars of expansion, they would have to recruit tribal mercenaries. Shortly before his death in 680, he called a council in order to pick a successor for him. Well, one of the men at this council is believed to have been under the pay of Muawiyah, because he ended up threatening violence against anyone who did not vote for Yazid to succeed the caliph. Unsurprisingly, Yazid won, but unfortunately for him, his reign would be short and full of turmoil. Not everyone accepted Yazid's ascension. Ali's second eldest son, Hussein, the younger brother of Hassan, refused to accept Yazid as caliph. and unlike his brother and father, was not willing to accept peace with the Umayyads. So he set out from his home in Medina with 70 followers, mostly relatives of his, and planned to march north to Kufa, hoping that he would find supporters in his father's former capital. However, no help came, and when Hussein and his party arrived at Karbala, he was confronted by Yazid, and they were all slaughtered. The party of Ali, or the Shiites, reject the institutions of caliph and caliphate, and substitute it with their own imam and imamate. I'll go into further detail about this in a later video, but the short version is, after the death of Muhammad, the semi-divine leadership of the Islamic world passed from Ali to his son Hassan, and then to his younger son Hussein, who became the second prophet's daughter, Fatima, which is why he is not recognized by most Shia as a legitimate imam. Al-Hanafiyyah had taken no part in this revolt, and had sworn allegiance to al-Malik. Al-Mukhtar gained control over much of Iraq and western Persia, and while governing the region, he granted equal rights to not trade with his appointed governors by being pushed back by the Khazars, as well as in Transoxania against remnants of the Mukhtar revolt, all nations and content suppressed Eritrea. In the code, Battle Stations 2020. World of Warships is one of the few brands that's continuing to support the history community